how that works is it turns out you can kneecap either side. You can either cause the servers to be unable to see the clients, or the clients to be unable to see the servers. Now, first model. Spoof malicious traffic from the client network to the server network. You'd have some podunk ISP, and you basically have a bunch of traffic that gets spoofed against the bank network. The bank eventually says, you're a business risk, I don't need to talk to you, stupid little ISP. Now the ISP is sending out all these requests, none of them are getting responded to, all the time in the world for fake responses to go ahead and get pushed in. In fact, because of DNS recursion, generally you can just go ahead and continually cause a name server to make outgoing requests, and thus with all these outgoing requests you have continual opportunities to get your fake responses in. And because you never have an actual successful response get through, you never have an issue where information gets into a cache, you just have permanent availability to keep on flooding. It ends up taking an average of 65,000 packets. Actually no, 32,000 packets if they have a fixed source port. So 32,000 packets, and you have hijacked an arbitrary institution. This is not good. And mind you, this is being brought to you by the power of crappy security technology. I'm not someone who normally comes up here and talks about how you can go ahead and attack things. But I have no patience for anyone and anywhere that's going to sell bad security equipment. You know, if you're actually putting money into security, it damn well better make things better. So, the other side of that, thank you, by the way. Spoofing malicious traffic from the server network to the client network. This would be some ISP. It's like, oh my God, the bank is attacking us. Block, block. We paid our bills. Now here's what's funny about this variant. Because you would think, well, the client network, you know, so it can't see the bank. How come it can see your spoofed replies? Because wouldn't your spoofed replies also look like they're coming from the bank? Funny thing about DNS. See, you've got all these name servers, and sometimes they have multiple IP addresses, and sometimes they forget to send the reply to the same IP that you sent to. And so the name servers have all been written where they don't actually care who's talking to them. They just want to see the right IDs. So you actually get this hilarious little situation where everyone in the world can respond for the bank, just not the bank. Crap. So, moral of the story, do not give the world access to your firewall tables. Disable anything that even smells like automatic network shunning. So, how have I been getting automatically network shunned around the world? I got me a new toy. It's great. It's got a huge amount of bandwidth. It's like 170 gigabit. Turns out there's this network that deals with DDoS attacks, these Prolexic guys. And they have a gigantic amount of spare bandwidth. Because the funny thing about DDoS is if they don't work, they don't continue. Because you're just wasting your money. So these guys basically have a network that eats DDoSes for lunch. They're a third-party firewalling service. They're awesome. And usually their bandwidth is not being used that heavily, so I get it. They've been very helpful. I worked with them on something called the Opti project a while ago to map the internet, and that actually was a huge success. I was walking around Vancouver, I'm like, that huge poster on the side of that building looks a little familiar. So I've been using their net to probe the internet's DNS infrastructure. Been working with some guys over at Cisco. Been working with Sebastian Kramer, who's actually, is he in the room? Sebastian rocks. Say hi to him later. And maybe you. I mean, I have a huge amount of bandwidth, and I'm out to do good things with it. So if any of you have an idea of what we can do if we, you know, with real visibility into the network, let me know. I'll see what we can do. I've been doing exceedingly large-scale scans, every IP, every name server, everywhere, every country. Yeah, don't do this at home. Where'd my colo go? That'll happen real quick. I lost my colo in like a half hour when I tried this without special treatment. You will get complaints. You will get calls from scary-sounding places, as you should. This is behavior that normally precedes an attack. Why am I doing it? Because it kind of doesn't make sense to me that the bad guys should have better information than we do. I mean, I don't want to be running defense as an idiot. So I'm trying to collect use our one advantage as white hats, as good guys, as, you know, we can go out there and we can make a bunch of noise and we don't need to hide because that's sticking me in prison. Cool. So what have I been doing to make this feasible? Reverse DNS. So when you do a lookup on it, it actually says, hi, here's who I am. When you go to the website at the URL, it tells you how to get in touch with me, how to reach me, who I am, why I'm doing things. Generally, the idea is if I'm going ahead and making it really easy to arrest me, maybe you won't. I actually got Aaron updated. You do a who is on the IP range, and it says Dan Kaminsky Security Research. So this stuff doesn't go unnoticed, uncomplained about. So I think the most amusing contact I got, well, second most, I had to explain in detail what I was doing, and the response was one line, "Thank you for the information. We will see you in Las Vegas." I'm like, I hope that's for a beer. Early results. So Google was taken out back in March of last year. Not all over the world, but not nowhere either. They were taken out by a attack that was a DNS poisoning attack, and it exploited systems that were Microsoft DNS servers that forwarded up to Bind 8. Now, if you go to the Bind homepage, the Bind is the largest DNS server in the world, or most widely deployed, they tell you, for the love of God, do not let anything forward to Bind 8. It is wildly insecure. And a bunch of administrators said, hey, that's a nice box in the corner. So in my attempt to kind of point out maybe you should do what your vendor tells you, I decided I'd go out and find all the name servers on the net and figure out how many were vulnerable to this. Well, you know, how did I find them? I ended up using a legitimate lookup. I figured everyone could host themselves. I had everyone look up localhost. Okay, well, everyone knows about that one, I figured. And next step was to figure out which ones were related to which other ones. Now, how do we do that? How do you find a forwarding interrelationship? Well, what is a forwarding interrelationship? I run DuckSparrow.com, and I go to Alice, and I say, hey, Alice, go look up alice.DuckSparrow.com. If Bob comes to me looking for alice.DuckSparrow.com, I have a pretty good idea that maybe Alice and Bob are in cahoots. So that's the general idea here. Now, the gold standard way of figuring out if two hosts are actually in some kind of communication between them is to actually use what's called the recursion flag. Now, when you do a DNS request, it turns out that you can ask the server, only give me this information if you already have it. This is as opposed to the normal DNS request, which is, you know, hey, you, go do a bunch of work for me, and when you're done, come back and tell me the answer, thanks. So you can actually just say, hey, if you already have this, go get it for me. So what you do is you tell one guy, hey, you, go out and do a bunch of work. Now I go to everyone else in the room, and I see if anyone else has the results that he was supposed to give me. If someone else has the answer, I bet he didn't do it himself. I bet he just told one of his buddies to do it. Exactly. So there's a little problem. It's ungodly slow. I go to him, and I tell him to do a bunch of work. I have to go to you, go to you, go to you, go to all of you. And then, you know, I have to iterate, you know, for 100 people, I need to do 10,000 lookups. For the 2.5 million name servers I was trying to look at, that's not going to happen in my lifetime. So there was a modification that I figured out, which is it turns out when DNS data comes back, there's a time to live value that actually is decremented from when the server first got that information. So let's say the time to live value is 3,600 seconds, is 1 hour. And I go to this guy, and he gives me the correct information. But he gives it to me with a 3,500 second time to live. Well, let's see. Why would it be 3,500 instead of 3,600? Let me do a little bit of math here. Yeah, it's 100 seconds ago, he went ahead and got the data. So what I do is I look to see who was I scanning 100 seconds ago. Because whoever I was scanning 100 seconds ago told this guy to go out and do a lookup. And this guy got it in his cache back then. So That's a much, much faster way of doing things. It has a few issues in terms of weirdness with how certain hosts manage their TTLs. So the answer ended up being what I first told you. That whole, hey, I go to Alice, I say look up alice.docsparrow.com. If Bob comes to me, I know Alice and Bob are in cahoots. I mean, that's the way that it works. And you end up being able to throw this all into a database, do a stupid little query, and you just get the answers. So it works really well. What did I find? 2.5 million named servers out there that actually were verified, that were reliably communicating with me. Reliably is odd. They tend to fly around a little. I went ahead and read, I was going to write a DNS fingerprinter myself, but there's a guy, Roy Arends. Someone have a time, what time it is right now, by the way? Okay, good. Just trying to keep track. I have a lot of stuff to show you guys. They're pretty. So I was going to write a DNS fingerprinter, but it turned out completely unnecessary. Roy Arends has written the DNS fingerprinting tool to use. It's called FPDNS. It's absurd. And yes, I ran it against all 2.5 million servers twice, once in July, once in November. And went ahead and figured out, well, here's what every IP's operating system is, and here's how every IP links to every other IP. So let's find every system that actually matches the Google case of forwarding to bind 8, and especially Microsoft forwarding to bind 8. Now, I didn't expect that many to be vulnerable to this problem. I mean, I figured forwarding relationships were kind of weird, obscure, rare, not 10% of the DNS infrastructure. Oh, crap. Apparently, lots and lots and lots and lots of places will have bind 8 forwarding to bind 8. 13,000 places will have Windows forwarding to bind 8. There was a total of 230,000 systems that had this vulnerable configuration. What the heck? So I'm actually working now on dealing with getting the information out. The problem with finding vulnerabilities on this scale is, let's say only 0.01% of the administrators out there would sue you into the ground for telling them that they had a problem. Let's see, 0.01% of 230,000 is me a small spot on the ground. So there's a lot of work going on to be able to do notification. There is some other stuff. I did find some evidence of DNS poisoning. This is funny. Reverse lookups. So anyone here know about, who here knows what a reverse lookup is? I love Europe. Holy crap. So here's the, so for those of you who don't, normal DNS, given a name, get the number. Reverse lookup, given a number, get the name. Now, the actual mechanics for how reverse lookups work are actually very similar to DNS. You know, you have some hierarchy, you go from host to host to host to figure out, eventually you get to a machine that is able to do a reverse lookup for you, what's called a pointer lookup. Now, most of the time, your ISP is going to handle the reverse lookup for your particular name. Now, in this case, I am the ISP, so I handle my own reverse DNS, which means when I'm flooding traffic across the internet, when, say, some people are investigating who's flooding traffic across the internet, a bunch of them see me. So I found about 38,000 hosts that will actually automatically do reverse DNS lookup. Actually, no, a bunch of them were automatic and a bunch of them weren't. I'm not sure which were which, but I can say that I did see traffic from networks I ain't ever seen traffic from networks from. So, and it turns out it's even possible to figure out which IP addresses caused which at least automatic lookups by randomizing your source. So for the forensics people in the audience, guys, be really careful when you do reverse lookups, because you leak. Going a little deeper. So, most interrelationships are shallow. That was what I thought. You know, figured, you know, you might have a bunch of machines that are talking to one guy, or, you know, might have like little stupid relationships. And, you know, I was totally right. In like 40,000, actually no, in the majority of cases, if I ask Alice to go look something up, Alice goes and looks something up. Now, there are about 40,000 what are called connected graphs that are hosts that are in some kind of shared relationship with one another. And these 40,000 systems, you know, this is pretty much what